Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We are back again with another culture content. Follow me, Jay Doran underscore the Culture Man on Instagram for short videos on business, life, culture, leadership, and so many more topics. Today I'm elaborating on one of our topics, which is why company holiday parties are essential for building culture. And if and when they're not, I'm curious. But at the base, company parties essential for building culture. Rather than use the word building, I would say firstly revealing, because the company holiday party will reveal the current state of affairs. Who's bought in, who's not, um, you know, what, and that goes not just for the those employed with an organization, but the actual organization itself, where the money was invested, where it wasn't, how much ballpark, how little. The holiday party is going to tell us about the current state of affairs if we're able to take a step back, read between the lines, pay very close attention, and see and understand where are we currently at as a group, as a team. Why a company holiday party is can be essential and can be productive instead of distracting and undermining to performance is it's an opportunity to exchange values. It's an opportunity to tell stories. It's an opportunity to make memories. If people are already bought into the mission and feel part of the vision and are valuable and have been recognized as valuable, and they're able to be themselves at the highest, the idea of getting together for a holiday or getting together at any time will be exciting, will be um, euphoria creating. It'll be something they'd wish others in their lives could participate in. It's an opportunity for new people to participate in the culture, or those, you know, life partners, spouses, people at home that hear about work but don't experience it on a daily basis. I mean, ultimately, the more support a company can get from those in the home to understand what the company does, why it does it, how implicitly it will benefit the lives of the employed, the better. Having buy-in. It's what we don't want as an organization is an employee going home and sharing all the bad and only the bad with their life partner, their spouse, or so on. Because over time, that will distance the employee from the company. Now, if everything that they share is true, shame on the company. But what about the idea of a company where people go home and share and create enthusiasm and excitement and inspiration for their loved ones of like where they work and what they're about and how passionate they are and what's to come in the future? That leads to hires, that leads to attracting talent, that leads to attracting energy to an organization. And a holiday party or a party in general, a ritual that others outside of the day-to-day organization operations can participate in is an opportunity for those people that are kind of on the sidelines to come check out what exactly is going on in this culture. Why company parties are essential. The word essential bothers me a little bit because there will be seasons where it may not make a lot of sense to party. How many parties where there to be had in the midst of a calamitous war. If we don't have an enemy, we must rejoice with friends. But if the enemy is at our gates, you know, is it the right time to party and recognize? I mean, understanding the nuance between those two scenarios is part of the tough job that is to be in chief positions. When is it unnecessary and when is it absolutely necessary? Parties for party's sake don't do much outside of play to the innate vanities of that exist in the capitalist system. But rituals with the intention to bring people closer and recognize those that have sacrificed and exemplified the values of an organization and elevate them in relationship to their peers and add in elements of fun and entertainment so people can let their guards down, be vulnerable, be themselves beyond just their title, their responsibility, the professionalism it takes to go to war every day is help can be extremely helpful for people to build relationships at work. Now, it's statistically been uh, revealed that as much as money, if not more important, depending on how much pay scale is for an individual, a friendship at work is one of the highest variables of employee engagement. Do I have a friend or friends at work? I would argue the building of friends and having friends at work infers a workplace environment that's inspired trust for a period of time. There's if in the absence of trust in the group, it's unlikely for friendships to be born because friendships come as a consequence of truth. And those that don't trust the organization don't tell the truth. An organization that doesn't trust its people, itself, its management doesn't create trust. In the absence of trust, a group of people become alienated, siloed, do not have friends at work because they're not going to be vulnerable, transparent, honest, direct. They'll be indirect in their communication. Communication breaks down. It'll feel just like a job. There'll be less gatherings outside of work amongst these teams of people, and that will show in the performance of the company. Here are some of my notes on why company holiday parties are essential. And I do want to play the devil's advocate and talk about where they can be unessential. Um, but physical proximity reminds us what's important. Who shows up, who doesn't. And I look to leadership first because, of course, leadership always tells the story that's not being expressed in their behaviors, their actions, more so than their words. Number two is this is common sense, yeah, but it's a values conversation. Yeah, the idea that the ritual is important. It's common sense. Like a family that doesn't gather for dinner is going to have a different dynamic. It's a bedrock. I've had so many guests on the Culture Crunch podcast talk about that with large families, the importance of family dinner. It's an opportunity for people to come together, to share their day, to exchange their thoughts, feelings, emotions, and just the mere fact of showing up demonstrates they value the family and the family values them. That's revealed in how much of a voice each participant has at the table. Values are exchanged when we physically gather. Um, you know, and in this world of virtual, it's become more discussed or more accepted the idea that that physically gathering is less important. It actually is not less important. It's integrating the two that's key. And it's this idea that it's less important is actually creating huge stresses on organizations that don't fully grasp the return on investment of getting people together. And because of what it says below their awareness, below words, it says in action. It creates a degree of influence, and it can be faked, but I mean, don't gather people with the intention to serve them and to rejoice and celebrate and project the future and have the responsibility to and the awareness not to be entitled that you go to work the next day and you get things done, you operate at a higher level. You don't go to work late the next day or not go to work at all the next day because you're out partying. The I'm digressing here for a second, but how the ritual takes place is key, because if it's just a drug, alcohol, sex, stupid idiocy, and that is stupid and idiotic to do all those types of crazy things at work, because that is a taking, it's a transactional, those are transactional things. And you work with people, you don't have transactions, you have relationships to serve the transactional nature of the customer relationship with the organization, because the goal is to have more relationships with customers. How are you going to have more relationships and longer term relationships with customers as an organization if you don't have long term relationships with the people that work with the organization? The answer is you can't, or you don't, unless it's an organization with no freaking team. It just, which is ultimately not going to be a full reality, because as an organization grows, it's going to have a bigger and bigger team. We're going to need to exchange more and more values with one another and build relationships deeper of giving and taking, but more giving than taking, so that there's trust, so that there's respect, so that there's understanding, because trust speeds things up. Trust creates execution. Number three is, if we are busy, it can feel like a distraction, so we rationalize. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple reasons why a group wouldn't have some type of engagement. It can feel busy, it can feel like a distraction. That can actually be a consequence of positive or constructive behaviors, like super high performance, getting things done. Size matters in this case. The larger the organization, weight, the more weight on it to reinvest in rituals and stories and mediums of influence to constantly push energy back into the system. So there's buy-in. The smaller it is, people are closest to that founding energy, that if it's taken ownership and bought in, people will feed off of that. Um, and so some of that's, you know, temperamental, and it can work for some companies to not have any rituals like that. And others, they couldn't imagine existing without it. But arguably, the larger the organization gets, the more pressure to gather its people. And of course, that becomes, how are they gathering? How are you gathering your people? And that's a whole masterclass more than a podcast. Number five, or number four, if we aren't working, why would we want to? So, yeah, I mean, managements that are disengaged and aren't getting things done, there'd be less interest to gather the people because of the shame that needs to be rationalized with some reason why the organization can't. And there's nothing more destructive, there's a few things more destructive to an organization than a disengaged, irresponsible, arrogant management that can't correct itself, and ultimately it will not reinvest into the organization's future. It will not give in proportion to for growth to happen. Number five, we have to reinvest in the company. That becomes a values conversation, because, and there are other ways to reinvest. It could be argued. I mean, for sure that an organization is reinvesting in other things. This is where communication and congruence comes in. So, doing what we say we're going to do, or our actions mirroring our words to our people. If we're not having a holiday party because the company's in a death spiral and it's all hands on deck, we're at war, the enemy is at our gates, and we're going to work through this season. We're actually all going to sacrifice and put it all on the table. That can get just as much, if not more, buy-in by many magnitudes for a company culture, if it's real, than a party of vanity and distraction and the lower natures of humans. Um, so there it's not as black and white as why company holiday parties are essential. Essential is not the right word. They can add value or detract value based on the context, based on the implementation, based on the overall picture. But in general, rituals and gatherings promote values, they attract talent, they um, it's another feedback loop or opportunity for feedback loop that can create energy and momentum and keep things moving forward. But they're not a band-aid or a fake PR medium to make, you know, try to influence everyone to think everything's okay when it isn't. Number six, why would we want to reinvest if we don't like our people or don't care about our people? So for a management side, listening to this to think, oh, I don't want to have a party. I don't want to. Do you even like your people? Maybe you don't. Maybe they're avoiding other responsibilities as it relates to changing the team. Because we're not going to want to buy our kids presents if we hate them. That's a little aggressive, but you know, we're not. If that's a thought, like I don't, you know, that then you have other responsibilities that have to be taken care of before you go and have some party and gathering, recognizing and sharing values. You're not even living the values. Number seven, values are exchanged because stories are told. Number eight, people need friends at work. Yeah, I mean, I've covered those too. Ultimately, when we invest, making that investment can the difference between increasing personal responsibility or continuing to sow the seeds of entitlement is going to have a relationship with how the organization's already working, sacrificing, laboring, communicating, getting things done. And the stories, the like it vulnerability it integrates, it brings people closer, it inspires, it lowers the intimidation factor that comes with authority, title, prestige, success, and it naturally attracts people closer to be able to share their thoughts, their opinions, their values. Stories are told, fun is had, memories are had. There's also a weeding out process of those that just don't align with the group, and that's we don't want to waste their time either. It's not good or bad or you know I mean in a sense of utility or context of the organization, it's good or bad, sure. But in the grand scheme of things, somebody that's a pariah in one culture might be the leader in another. So, company holiday parties, I'll go back to the beginning. They reveal the current state of affairs. They will reveal the culture, the values, the stories, the leadership, the language, what's really going on. And they can be hugely beneficial, especially in times of peace in how they're had and what's said and who's recognized and how and who's there and who's not. But in times of war, they'll also tell a lot. They either may not be necessary, or how the agenda is should reflect the context of what's going on in the current cycle of the organization. I mean, one can really go deep, 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 deep on how to have a party that increases purpose and productivity, or it could just be totally winged and vain. I would likely vain as a consequence, and undermining to the performance and the productivity of the organization. But if you're thinking about a holiday party this year, great. Think a little bit more deeply in how you can actually recognize the people, increase authenticity, lower destructive behaviors, tell a story of the organization, be vulnerable in your speech if you're a leader, and paint the picture for why we show up to work, where we're going, how we can get there, and how everyone that's participating in the gathering makes a difference. Please follow me, Jay Doran _ the culture man on Instagram, and I will see you next time.